Episode 188 of the Love in Lebanon podcast is on location this time around at Hickory Cottages, located near the Farmers Bank Fieldhouse. Jennifer Nevitt joined us and was nice enough to chat just before the ribbon on the cottages was cut last week. Jennifer isn't only the founding partner and CEO of Bel Canto Asset Growth Fund, she's also an Indiana native, excited to launch the company's first ever offering in the Hoosier State. Episode 188 of the Love in Lebanon podcast starts now.
Welcome to the Love in Lebanon podcast, highlighting all the great things happening in Lebanon, Indiana. Have an idea for an episode? Send an email to loveinlebanon@lebanon.in.gov.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Love in Lebanon podcast. We are on location for this episode. I'm Joe LePage. I am the City of Lebanon Communications and Community Development Director. We are on location because of an exciting development. The grand opening is taking place here at the Hickory Cottages near the Farmers Bank Fieldhouse. They just got their sign up. You can see it right on State Road 39. And we have the founding partner and Chief Executive Officer of Bel Canto, Jennifer Nevitt, here on our podcast. Jennifer, thanks for joining us this time around on location. Pretty nice place you got here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege and honor.
And can you describe the excitement that goes into a grand opening like this, being able to have people here to celebrate what has been days and weeks, months of hard work?
I would love to, because my enthusiasm is somewhat contagious. You know, when you think about building a property, you've got to make certain you find the land. You have to find a great municipality, and Lebanon has been phenomenal. You also then have to go raise capital, and you have to get to your investors. You've got to get to a banking and a lender. And as you build the capital structure, it's very difficult. Interest rates are really high right now. It's been quite a journey. We had some investors say, Lebanon where? And I'm like, Indiana, which is a great state. And so when you get to the point that you can unlock the door of the clubroom and you see that all the wear and tear and worry and sometimes joy, you literally can see and touch it, it just inspires you to continue.
And what made Lebanon, Indiana, and there are several Lebanons throughout the United States and beyond, what made Lebanon, Indiana that spot where you were willing to go before those to raise the capital to help make this project happen, or collaborative partners? Stars were aligning and Lebanon was the place for this development.
So I was born and raised in Arcadia, Indiana. I was actually born in Bedford. And my father, Dean Small, was the first basketball coach of Hamilton Heights High School when it was consolidated from Jackson Central and Walnut Grove. And so I was raised in Central Indiana, and I happened to be a child of the late 70s. And in Arcadia, Indiana, a lot of my classmates at Hamilton Heights High School, their parents lost their jobs when Chrysler blew up in Delphi and Kokomo, and I would say half of my high school class parents had been laid off. And as a child, and you have friends that want to be on the basketball team and they can't afford the tennis shoes, or they're really to a point, and I'll be very honest with you, on food stamps, and you see the challenge. I said to my parents very early on, I didn't realize how important jobs were to a community. And I know that when I get out of high school, I did spend 1 year at Marian University in Indianapolis to be a kindergarten teacher, believe it or not. I was going to marry my high school sweetheart and live on a farm. But I just said I had no idea. So when I left Indiana, it wasn't because I didn't love Indiana. I needed to get a job. And so there were no jobs in Central Indiana. So I started a journey in real estate, and I moved to Houston, Texas, where in 1982 you could get a job. And it was just very heartbreaking to leave this state. So I got an apartment property in Houston, and they said, would you like to be a leasing agent? And I thought, well, great. What would I make in Indiana as a school teacher? And it was $5 an hour, and that's what they were paying to be a leasing professional. I was so thankful I had a job. So I will tell you that at that point in time in Houston in 1982, my parents came to visit, and I said, I want to create jobs, and I want to be in real estate. And I think this apartment business is fantastic. If you work for the right owner and you work for the right company, they want safe housing for their consumers, and they want their residents to live really a lovely life, and many of us can't afford homes. So if you think back to, and my team knows the story, what made me come to Lebanon, Indiana, is when I started this company with Tom Leonard, who's my chairman of the board in Philadelphia. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania now. 11 years ago, I said, I want to go to Indiana and I want to bring jobs. And he said, Jennifer, Indiana? I don't think we're going to Indiana. Let's stay south of the Mason-Dixon. I want South Carolina. Let's go where we can build 24/7. We don't have snow. And I said, I'm going to give Indiana a cheer once a year. And so what made us come to Lebanon is COVID hit.
Okay.
And when COVID hit and the world stopped, I said, Tom, the I-69 corridor of Indianapolis off 465 has really developed out. But that I-65 corridor, I said, let me show you this piece of land on Google Earth. I said, there used to be a holodome there. And as a child, when my dad would finish basketball season, Mom and Dad would save up enough money. She was a nurse at Tipton Community Hospital for 42 years. And we would go for 4 nights so we could swim in the holodome. And I said, this was actually my vacation as a child. And that piece of land, I understand that Andy Card of Card Associates has availability. Can I get you to get on a plane? Well, in COVID, not a lot of us were traveling, so kind of keep that in mind. And finally, in March of 2021, he said, Jennifer, I happened to be at an event in Philadelphia, and 3 gentlemen at my table were raving about Central Indiana, that the people were great, that they were kind, that they were really just a fabulous place to do business. I'll get on a plane with you. And I said, oh my goodness, let's go. So I showed him the 465 corridor. Can you imagine driving in a circle? At the time, my mother lived in Greenwood, Indiana. And I said, this is how Indianapolis is built, and this is what it stands for. But this I-65 corridor, it's where the next generation will be. And keep in mind the perspective, Joe, is Eli Lilly had not announced yet that they were coming here.
Isn't that funny that the timing of all this stuff was not aligned? It wasn't attached in any way. It was just like, oh, wait a minute. That's kind of, that domino is falling right into place there, that piece.
So we pull in the rental car, and it's just windy as all get out, and we all know what wind's like in Lebanon, Indiana. And it's in April of 2021. And Tom Leonard looks at me and he said, Jennifer, this is a cornfield. I said, well, sir, there's soybeans in that field and corn over there. And he said, you know what I'm trying to say. How are we going to lease up an apartment property here? And I said, well, when I lived in Indiana, I worked for the Gene Glick Company in Indianapolis in 1987. I commuted into Keystone at the Crossing. I lived in Arcadia, and there's a lot of individuals. But right here where we are at this intersection, Tom, you have these split commuters. You have somebody who works in Lafayette and somebody who works on the north side of Indianapolis. You have one of the household who works in Crawfordsville. Yes, of course, there are great jobs in Lebanon, but this is a spot for cross commuters. So Lilly had not been announced. We didn't have any inside knowledge. I had somebody, I read on a Facebook post, oh, well, you knew they were coming. Had I known that, I would have bought more Lilly stock.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, so no, I had no idea. So I drove him to Crawfordsville, if you can imagine, and I drove him to Lafayette, a person who'd never been in the state of Indiana, and he goes, oh, I understand. If I'm a mile off of an interstate, people in central Indiana can get where they want to go. And the roads here were great. Go back to 2021, 465 was finally coming into its new world. So when we got to the airport in 26 minutes from this exit, he goes, I'm in.
And that's all it took. The proximity and the connectivity of the infrastructure. Okay.
And that was to my chairman of the board. That's before I had to go raise more money, okay? And so Mr. Leonard said, well, Jennifer, we have to finance this. And I said, well, Tom, let me tell you a story. My parents had all of their mortgages with the Farmers Bank in Tipton. And there's a branch of the Farmers Bank in Lebanon. And I know the word farmers is in the name of this bank, but I actually think that they would finance for us this land opportunity until we went to raise the money for the apartments. And I said, let me tell you why I'd love you to use a bank in Indiana. Banks in Indiana are amazing. So keep in mind my point of relativity and context to that statement, Joe, was we own property in Seattle. We own property in, a lot of states, Montana of all, places, Utah. And I said, but when you bank in Indiana and you have an agreement, though it's contractually with a banker, they will stand by their word and they will get you through the process. And our first loan was with the Farmers Bank.
It's amazing how much of Indiana is still kind of in your not only vernacular, but I mean, just all those things. It seems like the Indiana hospitality and all that stuff. What is it about that never left you, whether it be in Houston to Philly, where we're sitting right now, here inside the co-working area of the Hickory Cottages? What is it about Indiana that's kind of stuck with you all these years back from your dad coaching basketball?
You know what was a blessing about being raised here is I never knew the socioeconomics of any person in my life. My journey with every person, and God love my parents, Dean and Niola Small, but they raised me to be very respectful and to treat an individual as who they were. Well, everyone in Indiana is pretty much raised that way. And I found that when I moved to Houston, Dallas, Denver, I have lived in California, I realized that Indiana has a genuineness that you cannot mistake. And when someone states to you that they will do something, or that there's a commitment, or what I refer to as a promise, if they cannot deliver that, it's not walking on eggshells in Indiana. They come to you and just say, you know, I've got to renegotiate that. I can't do that. It was a great idea, but it's not going to work for me. And I didn't find that anywhere else. And so even though I was fortunate to have a fantastic career, I came back to work for the Gene Glick Company in Indianapolis in 1987. And I was very fortunate to work for Glick and Gene for 7 years. And when I came back, I said, you know, I never want to leave here because doing business is seamless. And when you can trust someone and you can trust their word, getting through the day of how we have a career and we, you know, have to have a job and make money, it just makes life more pleasant in today's world, but I found that everyone treated you fairly.
How gratifying is it to be able to be sitting where you're at right now, little more than an hour away from being able to have the grand opening and welcome so many people here to the Hickory Cottages right off State Road 39, right off I-65, just kind of like you forecasted several years ago. How has the payoff been? And is it, you know, one of those things where you're happy with the result of all this?
You know, right now we have 6 other real estate developments that are ground up construction. And as an apartment owner, sometimes we buy existing assets from other developers. But in those municipalities, we've had a lot of strife. We've had a lot of individuals who are not cooperating. We've had city officials be very defiant. And that is time and that's money. When we came to Lebanon and we introduced ourselves, the very first thing everyone said is, you're from Philadelphia. And I said, you want to make a bet? My zip code was 46030. I'm from Arcadia. And all of a sudden, the city officials went, oh, well, you understand how we want things done. And so I will tell you it's gratifying, and I've said this absolutely to every city official, including the mayor. It is wonderful to work with a city that even when you have problems, because you will, nothing is easy in life, and we're imperfect as developers and owners, but when you can call and state, I'd really like to discuss the situation. Can we talk about this utility? Can we talk about, you know, this wind shear is really high, or, you know, your sign ordinance only allows for, you know, a 2-inch sign, and everything is conversational. Now, they're going to come to a good decision, but they're going to listen to a perspective. And that's often not the case in this country. Yeah.
And everybody, we're talking with Jennifer Nevitt. She's the founding partner and also CEO of the Bel Canto Asset Growth Fund. And Jennifer, want to be able to kind of talk to you and be able to head on, kind of combat some of the things that have been said about and maybe some of the misconceptions you can help educate the public about. As I mentioned, we're here in the co-working space within the Hickory Cottages, but you joked before we hit record that you have listened and you have seen the Facebook posts and different things from different members of the public and beyond. As an Indiana gal seeing these things, how much joy will it bring you here in a couple of moments to be able to have that Hoosier honesty, being able to share and combat some of those things that are being said online?
What a great opportunity. So I don't have a college degree, Joe. I was going to be a kindergarten teacher, but I only went to college 2 years. And in Indiana, all of us are instilled that if you work hard and you're honest and you're results oriented, you can go create great things. And that life will not stop you, but you could stop yourself. And so a few of the posts were like, oh, these greedy landlords are coming in, and they're from Philadelphia. And in context, to just share, when we buy land, we have to write a financial pro forma. It's just like any individual who wants to go to the bank and apply for a mortgage to buy their home. And we have to show our proof of income, and we have to show what we can afford to build. And what I found very difficult is often our rental rates are discussed. And in context, they're very overpriced and they're very expensive. And the one thing I want to clear up right up front is how we set rents is not a magic ball. A bank doesn't tell me what I can charge. We go to the apartment communities in the region, and when we came to Lebanon, that was Whitestown and Zionsville. Those were the only even close in proximity, and we check their rental rates. And then we study those rental rates. The market actually controls rental rates. We don't set them. The market defines rent. So we did our studies in 2021 of what was being charged for rents, and I don't think that most people realize sometimes it's a wonderful thing to have an abundance of rental housing because prices stay reasonable. If you go to La Jolla, California and want to rent an apartment, they're not reasonable because there's a shortage of supply. And what was difficult to read, that being from Arcadia, Indiana, though I love it dearly, is we know that there is a price point the market will spend and can invest in housing, but not everyone can afford the American dream. And in Lebanon, when you looked at Whitestown and Zionsville, there were individuals from Boone County that didn't want to live in Whitestown and Zionsville. They wanted to live close to Lebanon. And one of the very first residents in Lebanon to call me, I hear you're renting, going to build these apartments. How much are they going to cost? And I shared the price point. She said, well, I want to live close to my grandchildren, and I'm getting ready to sell my home. And I've always wondered, we've got a few apartments here, but not very many, and they're often full. And so getting one that's nice enough that I really want, but I don't have a social life, and now that my husband's passed, what are you going to offer? Do you have an amenity space? And she's like, now I won't go to any yoga class. It was so funny. I said, well, that's not a problem. She said, but I want my grandchildren to be able to come over and go to the swimming pool. And I'd like to know that if I wanted to play bridge with some of my friends, or euchre, a great Indiana pastime, I could use the card room. And as I spoke to her, she said, I don't want to go to seniors living. I don't need to live by a lot of old people. I'll just feel old. Now, come to find out, this gal was 81 years old.
Only as old as you feel, right? If she wants to do all that stuff, no yoga, then that's all her.
So how we set the rental price is not magic. It's not to be egregious to the price. It's what will the market bear. Now, before you build an apartment property, then you have to take those rents, and then you have to look at your cost. And as much as we have in the United States with our food pricing going up, 25% I read from 2020 on a US Gov site just in the last week. Keep in mind that the material cost, our lumber cost alone in 2020 skyrocketed, 2022, skyrocketed. And so we look at the cost of what it will be to build. And here in Lebanon, I really wanted to build the cottage product. So we have 4 different product lines we build. We do a 4-story with an elevator. We do just garden walk-up 3-story, and if you go to Ocala, Florida. And we have these various product lines. But the cottage product line that we built here looks like a condominium. It's for lease, so I don't have to have the commitment of a mortgage. I can get in and out. And I say in and out because a lot of young families want to saving for the home. They only want to live with me for 2 years, and then they want to go find housing. So the cottages provides private entries for every consumer. And then I said to my chairman of the board, Tom Leonard, and my joint venture partner, Joe Fielden Jr., the Fielden family out of Knoxville, I said, I think we need to put lofts on these second floors. And they were like, lofts in Lebanon? I said, yeah, I want Lebanon to be hip and cool, and I want to inspire all those graduates from Purdue not to leave the state of Indiana. I want to keep that workforce here. So we need a little bit more than a flat basic apartment with the front door. So the gentleman looked at how much it was going to cost to build the lofts, and they go, Jennifer, we can afford the lofts. I said, fabulous.
And if you take the tour, and everybody, you'll see the pretty pictures of the amenities and things. You'll see some of the lofts that Jennifer's talking about. It is such a unique, and you mentioned the word hip. It's a hip space for not only those of us who are a bit older, but also those young kids also. It seems like it's got a layout that fits kind of wherever you're at in life, really.
So we had somebody relocate from the great state of Missouri, and they're coming here for employment, and they came to visit, and as gently and professionally and nicely as they could say, they're like, wow, this looks like I'm actually in a major city like Atlanta or Charlotte. This is so hip and cool. We weren't expecting this in Lebanon. And I said, well, have you accepted the job yet? And they said, no, we have some other job offers we're looking into, but they didn't have the same housing options that you have here in Lebanon. And it's really important for me, I've got my children, I want to bring them, I want my husband to be happy as well. But this housing option is actually far superior than the other 2 job offers he's received. And so when you have an outsider coming to the state and we need a workforce in central Indiana, and they're looking at other jobs, or those Purdue graduates, and I'm here to tell you, my parents would have loved for my brother and I to stay in Indiana, but my brother graduated and he moved to Washington, D.C. There wasn't housing here. We didn't have a job here. And so I do ask the local community, if you want your grandchildren to live here and you'd like your children when they go through their world to want to live in Indiana and to live in Lebanon, Indiana, you've got to give them more options so they understand and experience some really fantastic, sophisticated ideas in housing.
And you said without saying that maybe this apartment layout and kind of feel helped maybe seal the deal with this gentleman and his family relocating to Lebanon from Missouri.
Very much so. They accepted the position.
No, I was going to say that there's a rest of the story, as you know, Paul Harvey, a rest of the story coming with that. If we can, Jennifer, kind of talk about some of the other amenities, the 81-year-old gal that wanted to be hip and have the kids over to swim and things. The pool is gorgeous, beautiful, fantastic, but that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I mentioned earlier that we're in the co-working space here, but other amenities that are out there, what went into planning the kind of other things that folks can enjoy, that the weight room, that the clubhouse, the dog park that's here, all these things that are add-ons that may go and help, again, to educate the public into that price tag, to be able to have these other amenities and things you wouldn't have to necessarily pay for a gym membership because you have it in your backyard. You wouldn't have to do all these other things because they're right there. Was that by design as well?
Very much so. So our rental rate includes the fitness center. It's open till midnight, and then we do close it till 5 in the morning. But there's not a $49 price tag. You also don't have to get in your car and use your fuel at a very high price per gallon and drive to the fitness facility. So the ease of use, the quality of life, we wanted to minimize their driving time. We oversize our fitness room. We made certain we had state-of-the-art equipment, and then we also did a yoga room. So those yoga rooms don't necessarily have instructors, so we created screens and an entire technology that just by touchstone, they can choose whatever type of exercise program, regardless of their age or whatever their physicality is, and so they can customize that workout. We found that most of our residents have pets, and so our dog park's fabulous, but we also have the ability to have a bathing of your dog. We have a hairdryer for the dog. Yeah. So instead of spending all that money to go to the groomer, which sometimes, yes, you must do, but occasionally you have a pet that needs to have a bath. So our beautiful pet boutique, where they're literally hair drying out after they wash each of their wonderful dogs, that's part of that rent as well. Packages and the theft, having them left at your doors, we have package lockers. So when we have any of those larger packages delivered, they go into a locker and we text you the code to get in. That's also included in your rental rate. We have outdoor grills, so you don't have to be buying propane or cleaning it. You can go in again, and even in January, we have people with their hamburgers.
So cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And they have the cornhole. They call it cornhole in Philly, or is it bags or another game?
We have bocce ball.
Okay, bocce ball, and there's the cornhole game out there as well. Everybody kind of near the pool area. It's such a cool. Taking the tour a couple months ago, it was reminiscent of Florida. Going there to one of the condominiums, being able to kind of have how you can just spend a whole evening here where the kids are swimming, you're kind of hang out, enjoying the space. It's really an experience. It's not just, hey, here's the pool, dry off, and you're done. You can kind of hang out an entire day and lose track of time.
We have a cyber cafe
Exactly.
where we have Apple computers. So if somebody is like, look, I just need to learn how to do graphics, or I really want to take a course in a high-tech Apple type of product. And so we also have the private workstation we're in now. We've had 2 or 3 groups come in and they've said, look, I have an interview of an applicant and I really don't want to interview them at a hotel room. May I use the workspace? Absolutely. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, and you mentioned the euchre and you mentioned the bridge and being able to get to the game room. It's a separate area. You can go and just have a great time and watch the game and play a game as well. Everybody, if you want to check out some of the apartments themselves, you can go online if you want. Apartmentsinlebanon.com is the website. they do a great job here on social media as well. If you go to the Facebook page and just search for Hickory Cottages, you're going to see a lot of pretty pictures, a lot of collaborative kind of juices flowing throughout this space within our community. And one of those things is you can see it from the front door is the Farmers Bank Fieldhouse. You mentioned the relationship with farmers and the financing side of things. But all the layouts of the apartments, the condos are all kind of basketball themed. They're all kind of hip. There's the assist and the free throw. And it's so cool how you've tied that in, not only proximity wise with the field house being right here, but also just kind of that synergy that's being built in this type of space. Can you kind of talk about what that's been like? Because these have been both ground up developments. The folks here at the cottages were kind of joking about once we get vertical, we're going to rival the pace of the field house. And it was neck and neck throughout the construction process, even with a cold winter last year. But can you kind of talk about the synergy that's being developed off of this exit here on State Road 39?
So when we learned of the field house, we saw their Noblesville facility, and it was so impressive. And again, when you're showing a gentleman from Philadelphia what we have to offer in Indiana, I might add, who was very open-minded,
Eventually
was a very true statement. If you think about an 11-year journey, we were at the 10-year, marker, or 9-year. I'm like, you really need to go to Indiana.
That's funny.
But the field house offered all of this state-of-the-art. I refer to the field house as the Four Seasons of basketball and events for children. And you go back to high school in the 70s, we had a gym at a high school, and most of us did not have cars. And so now you look at what we have to offer this next generation. And for any parent to be able to literally walk across the parking lot and put their child into these different, venues, the facility itself is so beautifully built. But we believe that when you partner with a physical fitness, physicality component, you're actually raising generations much younger than you to really put health first.
Oh, and this is just the kind of the tip of the iceberg, quite literally. As I was driving to set up and record this podcast, they're moving the large mound of dirt, everybody. Don't worry, it's getting kind of moved and relocated because things are going to be happening here pretty soon. This is just the tip of the iceberg with restaurants and other amenities that aren't on the Hickory Cottages campus, but nearby, walkable. These are things that you can do on a random day, on a Tuesday, as we're recording this podcast, that type of thing.
Coffee shop, restaurants, hotels, the ability to do everything you need and walk on a lovely summer day is going to be right here. And I just believe there's a lot more joy and quality of life when an individual works really hard all week and they just want to go get a cup of coffee and they don't have to get in their car. And that's what this will provide. And
there's kind of a paved path that kind of goes around as well. This has very much like a cool campus type feel to it. I can't wait to see the other developments, the other dominoes that will fall to help add to that like you're talking about.
In 2025, fourth quarter, and 2026, this whole development will really feel like its own self-inclusive, and that will give so many services. The quality of life of the individuals that live here will really be enhanced.
And Jennifer, you did an amazing job of laying out and helping to educate the public, but if they're still hesitant, that they've settled on those 140 characters on one of the chatters, 1 through 14 or whatever we've got here locally, what would you recommend them do? Stop by and check it out for themselves, that type of thing, not just kind of look at the pretty pictures and say, yeah, that's not for me, that type of thing.
In life, and again, leaving Indiana was hard, but the blessing of it is I learned that when I kept an open heart and an open mind, and I gave the benefit of the doubt to something that really at the age of 62, I learned that often I didn't have the full context of the other person. And what I ask is a benefit of the doubt that we are not a big corporation. We're not a development corp. We're a private.
Swooping in for a big payday and then getting out of here, not caring about the community. That's not you guys.
Exactly. We're privately held. We're family office. And when we build an apartment property, we hold it for perpetuity. So when we pick a piece of land or property to buy, our average investment cycle is about 20 to 30 years. Wow. So we're very selective where we go because we want to be good neighbors and we want to produce that contribution. I believe that where there's a large misconception is, oh, well, you're just a large corporation and a developer, and you're going to come in here and flip that property, and then you're going to not keep the landscaping beautiful. You're not going to invest all that beautiful money in those mums that are out there today. And it's actually quite the opposite. We're family-owned. We only have about 250 employees. Most of our team members have worked on and off in companies I've been in for more than the 11 years. And what I'd love to ask them to do is have enough of an open mind that you stop by and visit us, and that you take a look at what we've tried to do. But please know, this did not come from a rich individual who had a ton of money and they wanted to swoop into central Indiana and see if they could, quote unquote, make a fortune. I'm a self-made person, and Mr. Leonard is from a family of 11. And so when he was born and raised in Philadelphia, he was the oldest child. But those 11 individuals, his brothers and sisters, all have worked for everything that they've ever achieved in their life. And they, like myself, came from, a lower middle class background, but they were instilled that life will offer you opportunities if you do not live in the fear of trying it. So if they come with an open heart, and they do realize that we're not a major mammoth corporate developer, we're not going to be huge. We want to be small, but we also are family owned. If they give us that benefit of the doubt and they look at the quality we want to provide to Lebanon, I do believe that they'll see that for some, this could be a terrific housing option.
I'm sure it was in one of your hopes and dreams, but an Indiana kid coming back to do an Indiana project like this after, ringing the bell for Lebanon for so many years and in different places you've lived all over the country, I'm guessing it brings you a great amount of pride to be able to do this back in the Hoosier State.
I'm very blessed to have not ever been a proud person. I've been very grateful, and not only has it brought me gratitude, I used to speak at Indiana University for the business department, and I would tell inspiring seniors, Indiana's a great place, and you should try to stay here, but when you can bring jobs back, in about 1989, believe it or not, that long back, I was helping design an apartment building, and they were choosing their elevator provider. And I said, please use Otis Elevators. They're in Bloomington, Indiana. Now, we all know they're long gone. And the developer said, why would I use an Otis elevator? And I said, because I want those jobs to stay in Indiana. And I believe that you'll be thrilled with that product. And I believe that it wasn't pride, but it was a sense that the promise I made to myself when I was 15 and 16, that central Indiana needed jobs for individuals like myself who needed to leave the state. When you have the ability to work hard to provide the gift, you work hard to do what you can, and then you put it in God's hands.
Yeah, very well said. And everybody, if you're listening to this interview with Jennifer and you want to know more, really the place to go where you get all the information is just on the World Wide Web, LebanonIN.com. You can go right there, see all the floor plans and see all the amenities, great pictures there, great info as well. Social media too, Hickory Cottages, and you can check it out as well. Stop by, if you will, 901 Kelly Green Lane, just off State Road 39. Just look for the big Farmers Bank Fieldhouse sign that's now on the side of the field house, and you're good to go there. Jennifer, thanks for the time. I'll let you get going so we can cut a ribbon and have all the grand opening festivities here in just a little bit. But
thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah,
and thank you, Lebanon, Indiana. We do love it here.
It's fantastic. Fantastic. Many years of continued success here at Hickory Cottages. Everybody, thank you for listening to this episode of the Love in Lebanon podcast. We look forward to bringing you more great episodes coming your way soon. Take care.